She thought she'd found the love of her life. What she didn't know was that she was chatting with one of America's most wanted serial killers. 28-year-old Sarah Mitchell never imagined that a simple swipe right on Tinder would change her life forever, and almost end it. It was a rainy Thursday evening in October 2019 in Denver, Colorado, when she finally decided to try the dating app her friends had been raving about. "I've always been kind of traditional about relationships," Sarah recalls, nervously adjusting her coffee cup during our interview. "But after ending a 5-year relationship, my friends convinced me to try something new. It's just for fun," they said. What's the worst that could happen? The worst, as Sarah would later learn, was something far darker than anyone could have imagined. Sarah worked as a nurse at Presbyterian St. Joseph Hospital, a job that kept her on her feet with long, unpredictable shifts. Her life followed a steady rhythm: work, the gym, and the occasional night out with friends. She lived alone in a cozy apartment in Denver's Capitol Hill neighborhood, a safe and lively area she loved. "I was in a good place," she says. "I'd just gotten a promotion, was living on my own for the first time, feeling independent and confident." Maybe it was that newfound confidence that made her let her guard down. On the night of October 17th, after a long and exhausting shift, Sarah curled up on her couch, watching Netflix, when her phone buzzed with a new Tinder notification. It was a message from someone she'd matched with a few days earlier, Marcus Thompson. Marcus's profile showed an attractive man, probably in his early 30s, with dark brown hair, striking blue eyes, and what Sarah described as a disarming smile. In one photo, he wore a sharp, tailored suit. In others, he posed in front of the Eiffel Tower, on a yacht somewhere tropical, and hiking through the Colorado mountains. "He seemed too perfect to be real," Sarah admits. "Successful, adventurous, handsome, but our conversations felt natural. It didn't seem forced like with other guys I'd met on the app." Marcus's first message was simple but thoughtful. "Hi Sarah. I saw that you work in healthcare. I have enormous respect for people who dedicate their lives to helping others. How was your day?" It seemed genuine, kind, respectful. But what Sarah didn't know was that this message had been carefully designed, because Marcus Thompson didn't exist. His real name was David Eugene Hartwell, age 34, and he'd been on the FBI's 10 most wanted list for over 2 years. David had a specific method. He created fake dating profiles using stolen photos of attractive, successful men he found online. He targeted women in caring professions, nurses, teachers, social workers, because, as investigators would later find written in his diary, they have this natural need to help and to trust. Between 2016 and 2019, David used this technique to lure at least 12 women across 6 U.S. states. 4 were found dead. 3 vanished without a trace. 5 managed to escape, though only 2 ever came forward to the police. Sarah, of course, knew none of this when she began chatting with the charming Marcus. For a week, they exchanged messages daily, light, engaging, and increasingly personal. Marcus asked about her work, her hobbies, her dreams. He seemed genuinely interested. He wasn't like the other guys, Sarah remembers. He didn't make it about sex or looks. He asked real questions: why I became a nurse, whether my family lived nearby. It felt sincere. But it wasn't sincerity. It was strategy. Each question he asked was deliberate. Every answer Sarah gave was another piece of a puzzle he was quietly assembling. He learned that she lived alone, that her family was over 1,000 miles away in California, that she worked night shifts and often came home too tired to socialize. It was everything he needed to know. David also had a psychological trick: mirroring. Whatever his target liked, he liked too. When Sarah mentioned her love of hiking, he instantly became an outdoorsman. When she said she was learning Italian, he told her he'd spent a summer in Tuscany. When she gushed about rescue dogs, he sent photos of his golden retriever, Charlie, photos he had stolen from a stranger's Instagram. It felt like we had everything in common, Sarah says with a bitter laugh. It was like he was the male version of me. Looking back, that should have been a red flag. But at the time, I honestly thought I'd found my soulmate. After a week of non-stop messages, from early mornings to late nights, Marcus finally suggested meeting in person. "How about dinner on Saturday?" he wrote. "I know the perfect place downtown. Nothing fancy, just good conversation and Italian food, since you're studying the language." Sarah hesitated. Her friends had warned her about first Tinder dates. Always meet in a public place. Always tell someone where you're going. Always have an escape plan. But Marcus seemed so genuine, so different from the others. So when he asked her out, Sarah smiled and typed back, "I'd love to." What she didn't know was that, at that very moment, David was sitting in a rental car parked across the street from the hospital where she worked. For 3 days, he had been watching. He knew her car, her schedule, the times she came and went. He had mapped out every security camera in the area and planned the most discreet route to her apartment. Even the restaurant he chose wasn't random. It wasn't for the romantic lighting or the pasta. He picked it because it was just 2 blocks from an abandoned warehouse he'd rented under a fake name 2 weeks earlier. That same night, Sarah added the dinner date to her phone calendar and called her best friend, Jessica, brimming with excitement. "Jess, I think I found someone really special," she said, her voice glowing through the phone. "He's perfect." Jessica laughed on the other end. "Be careful with guys who seem too perfect, Sarah. But hey, send me the restaurant's location and a picture of him, just in case." Sarah promised she would. But in the rush of work over the next few days, she forgot. It was a small oversight, one that would almost cost her life. By Saturday night, she hadn't felt this nervous or this thrilled in years. She slipped into a simple but elegant navy blue dress and chose flat shoes, thinking she wanted to be comfortable. That small, practical decision would later prove to be crucial. She packed a small purse with only the essentials: her phone, some cash, and lip gloss. At 7:45 p.m., her phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. "I'm here, beautiful. I can't wait to meet you in person." Sarah took one last look in the mirror, inhaled deeply, and locked her apartment door behind her. It was a cool, clear October night, the kind that makes the city glow a little warmer under the streetlights. She smiled as she walked to the bus stop, completely unaware that a pair of eyes were following her. Eyes that had already watched 12 other women make that same confident walk toward what they thought was love. None of those women had ever come home. The restaurant, Osteria Marco, was lively that evening. The lighting was soft and golden, the air filled with the scent of garlic and fresh basil. Everything about it felt perfect for a first date. But when Sarah met Marcus's eyes for the first time, something about them didn't quite match his smile. She arrived 5 minutes before 8. The host guided her to a table near the back, where Marcus was already waiting by the window. He looked exactly like his photos. Handsome, well-dressed, his light blue shirt bringing out the color of his eyes. As soon as he saw her, he stood up and waved with an easy, confident smile. "Sarah, you look beautiful," he said, stepping forward to hug her. The hug lasted a moment longer than expected, and Sarah noticed the scent of an expensive cologne lingering in the air. "Thank you for agreeing to go out with me," he said smoothly. "My pleasure," she replied, a little nervous but excited. He pulled out her chair, a charming, old-fashioned gesture, and she felt herself relax a little. What she didn't notice was how deliberately he'd chosen that exact table. It was tucked away in a dim corner of the restaurant, away from the main entrance and mostly hidden from view of the street. More importantly, it was right beside a side door that led to a narrow alley, and directly to the parking lot where his rental car waited, its license plates fake. "Have you been here before?" Sarah asked, opening her menu. "A few times," Marcus lied easily. In reality, he'd spent 2 days studying the layout of the place, chatting casually with staff to learn the busy hours, even testing the side exit. "The pasta here is excellent," he said, flashing that disarming smile. "How about we share an appetizer?" For the first 30 minutes, everything felt easy and natural. Marcus was attentive and charming. He asked thoughtful questions about her nursing career, about the challenges of the healthcare system, about what inspired her to help people. He told stories about his supposed career in business consulting, how he traveled often for work, met interesting people, and loved discovering new places. I travel a lot, he explained casually. So sometimes I might take a while to reply to messages. I hope you'll be patient with me. It was a carefully rehearsed lie, one meant to explain the gaps in communication that came whenever he was stalking his next target. Sarah smiled, accepting it without suspicion. That must be so exciting, she said. You get to see new places all the time. He nodded, taking a slow sip of his wine. It has its pros and cons, he said softly. Sometimes it gets lonely. That's why it was so nice meeting you, Marcus said softly. Someone I can actually have a real conversation with. Sarah smiled, feeling her guard melt just a little more. But during the main course, small, unsettling details began to surface. Things she couldn't quite explain, but couldn't ignore either. The first was how well Marcus seemed to know Denver, far better than he'd let on. When she mentioned her neighborhood, Capitol Hill, his face lit up instantly. Oh, I love that area, he said. There's this great little bakery, Rosenberg's Bagels? Sarah blinked in surprise. Wait, you know Rosenberg's? For a brief moment, Marcus froze. The hesitation was only a split second, but long enough for her to notice. A coworker recommended it to me once, he replied quickly. Said it was the best in town. His tone was smooth, but something about it felt rehearsed, like a line he'd practiced. Then came the second odd moment. Her phone rang. It was Jessica, no doubt checking in. Sarah excused herself politely and answered. Hey Jess, everything's fine. I'll call you later, she said quickly, keeping her voice light. As she spoke, she caught Marcus out of the corner of her eye, leaning forward ever so slightly, as if straining to hear her conversation. When she hung up, he asked casually, Was your friend worried about you? No, Sarah laughed softly. She just likes to check in when I have dates. She's kind of protective like that. For just a moment, something in his expression shifted. His eyes hardened. His smile faltered. It was barely noticeable, gone as fast as it appeared. But Sarah saw it. A flicker of something cold. What a caring friend, he said finally, forcing a smile. You're lucky to have someone who cares that much. The way he said it didn't sound entirely sincere. By the time dessert arrived, Sarah's unease had settled into her stomach like a quiet knot. Marcus leaned forward, smiling again. How about we go for a drive after this? I know a beautiful spot nearby. Amazing view of the city, romantic, private. Sarah hesitated. It was already close to 10 p.m., and she had an early shift the next morning. More than that, something in his tone had changed, less friendly, more insistent. Maybe another time, she said gently. I really should get home. I'm on call tomorrow. Marcus's reaction was instant and telling. His jaw tightened, his shoulders stiffened. For a few seconds, his right fist clenched under the table before he forced himself to relax. Sure, he said finally, his voice calm but colder than before. I completely understand. The warmth that had filled their earlier conversation was gone. Sarah couldn't explain it, but she suddenly felt off balance, as though the man sitting across from her wasn't quite the same one she'd been talking to all evening. When the check came, Marcus insisted they split it, despite having offered to treat her earlier. Independent women prefer it that way, don't they? He said with a small smirk. The words sounded like a compliment, but the tone, sharp and slightly mocking, made her stomach twist. Outside, the night air was crisp. As they stepped out of the restaurant, Marcus gestured vaguely toward the dimly lit parking lot behind the building. My car's right over there, he said. Can I give you a ride home? Sarah's instincts kicked in immediately. Every part of her told her no. Thanks, but I think I'll just grab an Uber, she said, trying to sound casual. Marcus stopped walking. An Uber? He repeated slowly, his tone shifting again. After such a great date? The irritation in his voice was unmistakable. The easy charm from earlier was gone, replaced by something sharper, colder. Sarah forced a polite smile. It's nothing personal, she said quickly. It's just, safety first. Kind of the first rule of dating apps. For a moment, he just looked at her, silent, calculating. She could almost feel the tension radiating off him, like he was deciding something. Then, just as quickly, the mask slipped back on. The smile returned, smooth and controlled. "Of course," he said softly. "You're absolutely right. Safety first." But he couldn't completely hide the flash of anger in his eyes. "Can I at least wait until your Uber gets here?" Sarah nodded. She had already ordered the car. It would arrive in 4 minutes. Those 4 minutes felt strangely long. Marcus kept up small talk, but his questions were oddly specific. "So, when's your next day off? What time do you usually get home from your shifts? You must be exhausted after those night shifts, huh?" Each one felt less like conversation and more like information gathering. When her phone buzzed, signaling that her Uber had arrived, she felt a wave of relief. "That's my ride," she said. Marcus stepped closer. "Wait," he murmured. Then he leaned in. Sarah turned her head slightly to offer her cheek, but Marcus cupped her face with both hands, holding her still as he kissed her on the lips. A slow, lingering kiss that lasted far too long for a first date. When he finally pulled back, his hands still resting on her face, his voice was low and deliberate. "It was a perfect night," he said. "I can't wait to see you again." As she slid into the back seat of the Uber, Sarah's heart raced. She couldn't tell if it was nerves, confusion, or fear, but something deep inside whispered that this man, this Marcus Thompson, wasn't who he claimed to be. Marcus's tone never shifted. It stayed light, charming, and confident. But beneath every "hey beautiful" and "thinking of you," there was something unnervingly precise. He referenced things she hadn't told him. The color of the dress she'd worn the previous night, the route she usually took to work, even the name of the cafe she and Jessica had just left. At first, Sarah tried to convince herself that maybe she had mentioned those details without realizing it. Maybe she was overthinking. But as the day wore on, the messages started to feel like someone narrating her life in real time. "Marcus, you look amazing in that green jacket." Sarah froze. She was wearing her green jacket. Right then, in her apartment, about to take it off. She dropped her phone and ran to the window, her hands trembling. Her apartment faced the street, the same one Marcus had studied the night before. And parked just across the road was a dark sedan she didn't recognize. Tinted windows. Engine off. Jessica joined her at the window, her expression tightening. "You don't think?" "I don't know," Sarah whispered. "But I can't see who's inside." Jessica grabbed her arm. "We're calling the police." Sarah hesitated. "And tell them what? That a guy I went on one date with might be watching me? They'll think I'm paranoid." Jessica exhaled, shaking her head. "Then take screenshots. Everything. Every text. We need evidence." For the next few hours, Sarah documented everything. His messages, her Tinder chat history, even her notes from the night before. By the time evening came, her nerves were raw. Marcus had sent 12 more messages, each one casually intrusive. "Marcus, you must be tired. Long day, huh? Marcus, you didn't eat dinner. That's not good, sweetheart. Marcus, I'd hate to see anything happen to you." That last one sent a chill straight through her. Jessica's tone hardened. "Okay, that's it. We're going to the police now." But before they could leave, a soft ding echoed from Sarah's laptop. She glanced at the screen. It was a new email. The sender, Marcus Thompson. The subject line, "Just in case you're curious." Inside was a single attachment, a photo. It was taken from across the street, looking up at Sarah's apartment window. The caption below read, "You really should close your curtains, Sarah." Jessica gasped. Sarah's blood ran cold. They rushed to the window again. The sedan was gone. Only the faint sound of an engine echoed down the street. Jessica's voice trembled. "He knows where you live, Sarah. He's watching you." Sarah's phone buzzed again. A new message. "Marcus, don't be scared. I just want to see you again. Tonight." Jessica grabbed the phone and shouted, "We're calling 911 right now." For the next 20 minutes, the apartment filled with flashing blue and red lights. Officers took their statements, noted the threatening messages, and promised to look into it. But when they traced the phone number, It led to a burner SIM card registered under a false name. By the time the police left, Sarah felt a hollow pit of dread in her chest. The man she'd met wasn't Marcus Thompson. He was no one. That night, she didn't sleep. Every creak, every car outside, made her flinch. And when her phone lit up again at 2:47 a.m., she nearly screamed. A text from an unknown number. "You shouldn't have called the police." Sarah's hands shook so violently she almost dropped the phone. Jessica, half asleep on the couch, jolted upright. "What is it? What happened?" Sarah handed her the phone wordlessly. Jessica's face drained of color. "Oh my God, he knows." And outside, somewhere in the darkness below, a camera shutter clicked. Sarah's voice trembled. "More concrete evidence? What do you need?" "For him to break into my apartment first." Detective Martinez sighed, the kind of weary sigh that comes from seeing too many cases that end too late. "I understand how frightening this feels, Miss Mitchell, but the law can only intervene once a direct threat is made or a physical boundary is crossed. Right now, we have suspicion, not proof." Jessica leaned forward, frustration sharp in her voice. "He has crossed boundaries. He knows where she works, where she lives. He's leaving things at her door." Martinez looked at them both with quiet empathy. "Then keep documenting everything. Every text, every call, every object left behind. If he escalates, we'll have grounds to act faster. And Sarah," her tone softened, "don't be alone for now. Stay somewhere safe." Sarah nodded numbly, clutching her folder of printouts. The words, "if he escalates," echoed in her mind. She already felt like she was being hunted. How much worse could it get? Outside the precinct, the morning sun felt harsh, almost mocking. Jessica placed a hand on Sarah's shoulder. "We'll figure this out. You're not alone. Okay?" Sarah managed a small nod. But deep down, she knew something had changed. The fear wasn't just paranoia anymore. It was presence. Something unseen, hovering, constant. That afternoon, she stayed with Jessica. They closed all the blinds, locked every door, and tried to distract themselves by watching TV. For a few hours, the world felt normal again, until Sarah's phone vibrated. Unknown number. "You looked beautiful in that blue sweater today." Sarah's blood ran cold. She was wearing that sweater right now, sitting on Jessica's couch. Jessica's face turned pale as she read the message. "He's watching you. Now." They jumped to their feet and ran to the window. Across the street, parked at the curb, was a gray SUV. The windows were tinted black, the engine idling. "Call the police," Jessica whispered. Sarah dialed 911, her hands trembling so badly she nearly dropped the phone. Within minutes, a patrol car arrived. 2 officers approached the SUV, but as they neared, it suddenly pulled away, turning the corner and disappearing into traffic. "Did you see the plates?" Sarah asked, her voice breaking. One of the officers shook his head. "Too dark to read, but we'll make a note and increase patrols in this area." After they left, Sarah sat on the edge of the couch, shaking. "He's not going to stop, Jess. He's always one step ahead." Jessica didn't argue. She just sat beside her, silent. That night, Sarah barely slept. Every sound made her heart pound. A passing car, footsteps in the hallway, the faint hum of the refrigerator. Around 3 a.m., she finally drifted off, her phone still in her hand. When she woke at dawn, the first thing she noticed was the silence. The second was the folded note that had been slipped under Jessica's front door. She hesitated before picking it up. The handwriting was neat, deliberate. "You can run from me, Sarah, but I always find what's mine." Her scream jolted Jessica awake. By noon, they were back at the police station, the note sealed in an evidence bag. Detective Martinez met them with a grim expression. "Now we have something," she said quietly. "This qualifies as a threat." Sarah clung to that small sliver of hope, that now, finally, the system would protect her. But when the detective ran the burner phone numbers and checked nearby surveillance footage, every lead ended the same way. Nothing. The SUV wasn't registered. The phone was untraceable. Whoever Marcus or Michael Torres, really was, he knew exactly how to vanish. Days passed. Sarah stayed at Jessica's, refusing to go back to her apartment. Each morning, she woke up hoping for silence, but the messages kept coming. From new numbers, new accounts, each one colder than the last. I miss your voice. You can't hide forever. We're meant to be together, Sarah. You'll see. And then one morning the messages stopped. Completely. For the first time in weeks, there was nothing. No texts, no calls, no sign of the SUV. Jessica tried to reassure her. Maybe he got scared off by the police. Maybe he's finally done. Sarah wanted to believe that. She needed to believe that. But as she stepped outside later that evening to get some air, she noticed something on Jessica's mailbox. A small, black USB drive taped to the side. Her heart sank. She peeled it off carefully, her hands trembling. Jessica came running when she saw her expression. What is it? Sarah looked at the USB like it was poison. He left this. They stared at each other in silence, both knowing that whatever was on that drive would reveal something far worse than the messages ever had. That night, the Denver police and FBI coordinated a full surveillance operation around Jessica's apartment. 2 unmarked cars were parked discreetly across the street. Agents positioned inside with long lenses and radios crackling in the dark. Every entrance, every back alley, every possible escape route was covered. Sarah sat on the couch, staring blankly at the wall. The blinds were closed, the lights dimmed. She hadn't eaten all day. Her nerves were stretched thin, her body running purely on fear. Jessica sat beside her, gently rubbing her arm. They've got eyes everywhere, Sarah. You're safe now. Sarah nodded, but she didn't believe it. He's always one step ahead, she whispered. He knows what I do before I even do it. Around midnight, Agent Stone entered the room. Her face was calm, professional, but her eyes betrayed concern. We just intercepted a signal, she said. A new fake profile using your photos, Sarah. He's pretending to be you now. He created it about an hour ago. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Why would he do that? To bait someone, Stone said grimly, or to humiliate you. It's part of the control. He wants you to know he can become you if he wants to. Jessica clenched her fists. This man is a monster. Stone nodded slightly. He's methodical, obsessive, and he thrives on fear. But that also means he'll try to make contact again soon. And when he does, we'll be ready. At 2:43 a.m., one of the agents outside spotted movement. A figure, wearing a dark hoodie, appeared across the street near a row of parked cars. The man moved slowly, deliberately, staying in the shadows. Target visual confirmed. The agent whispered into the radio. Sarah and Jessica were immediately escorted to the back bedroom while Agent Stone coordinated from the living room. Hold positions, Stone instructed. We need him to make a move for probable cause. Through the narrow slit in the blinds, they watched him. He approached the mailbox, Jessica's mailbox, the same one where the USB had been left. This time, he held something small in his gloved hand. Team 2, move, Stone ordered sharply. Before the man could slip the object inside, the quiet street exploded into flashing lights and shouting. FBI, don't move. But instead of surrendering, the man bolted, sprinting down the alley behind the building. 2 agents chased after him. A third car screeched to block the other end, but he was fast, cutting through the narrow gap between 2 fences and disappearing into the darkness. When the agents returned minutes later, all they found was a dropped phone. Another burner. No fingerprints, no usable data. Agent Stone cursed under her breath. He's trained. He's done this before. But he knows now we're closing in. Sarah, trembling, came out of the bedroom. Was it really him? Stone nodded. We can't confirm 100% yet, but the height, build, and movement pattern match. He's here, Sarah. Still in Denver. The following morning, a forensic tech analyzed the USB drive left days earlier. Inside were dozens of photos, all of Sarah. Some were screenshots taken from her public Instagram, but others were clearly taken through a telephoto lens. From across the street, through windows, At the hospital parking lot. Jessica covered her mouth as the images flashed across the screen. Oh my God. Sarah turned pale. He's been watching me for weeks. Agent Stone's voice was steady but grim. Not weeks, she said, scrolling further through the folder. Months. They found metadata dating back to before Sarah and Marcus ever matched on Tinder. The realization hit Sarah like ice. He hadn't stumbled upon her profile. He had targeted her from the start. That afternoon, the FBI officially declared Sarah a protected witness. She was moved to a secure location under federal watch, her phone replaced, her social media deactivated. But that night, as she sat in the safe house, an anonymous apartment somewhere in the suburbs, her new phone buzzed. It was an unknown number again. There was only one message. Did you really think I wouldn't find you? Sarah screamed, dropping the phone. Agent Stone rushed into the room. What happened? Sarah pointed at the screen, tears streaming down her face. He knows where I am. He knows. Stone grabbed the phone, scanning it quickly. The message had no origin point. It had been sent through an encrypted network. For the first time, even the seasoned agent looked shaken. He's evolving, she muttered. He's not just a predator anymore. He's hunting in plain sight. Sarah buried her face in her hands. What does he want from me? Stone hesitated before answering. Control. And the one thing he can't stand is losing it. Outside, the night was silent again. But across the street, in the reflection of a parked car's windshield, a faint red light blinked. Camera. Recording. He sat down across from her, leaning slightly forward, his eyes fixed on her face. The confidence that once felt charming now felt menacing. The composure of a man who believed he was still in control. You look beautiful, he said softly, almost tenderly, just like the first night. Sarah forced a faint smile, her fingers tightening around the edge of the table. It's been a while since that night, she said carefully. A lot has changed. David tilted his head, studying her. Not really. You and we're still the same. The connection we had, that's not something time can erase. In her earpiece, Agent Stone's calm voice whispered, Good. Keep him talking. Let him lead the conversation. Sarah nodded subtly and leaned forward. I just want to understand, she said, her tone soft but steady. Why me, David? Why all of this? He smiled faintly, a shadow flickering across his expression. Because you're different. The others, they pretended. They played games. You didn't. You were honest, open. You felt something real that night, didn't you? Sarah hesitated. She knew every word she spoke could mean the difference between capturing him or provoking him. Maybe, she whispered, but you scared me. David's jaw tightened. Scared you? I never wanted that. I wanted you to see me, the real me, not the monster the world made up. Agent Stone murmured. He's deflecting responsibility. Push him about the others. Sarah took a breath. The other women, David, Jennifer, Rebecca, Amanda, did they see the real you too? For the first time, his eyes darkened. The smirk faded. He leaned back, the flickering candlelight casting sharp angles on his face. They disappointed me, he said coldly. They said one thing, then turned their backs. They made promises they didn't keep. Promises about what? Sarah asked quietly. He smiled again, but this time it was a broken, haunted smile. About staying. About being loyal. You know what loyalty means, don't you, Sarah? Her throat tightened. Yes, but that doesn't give you the right to hurt them. David chuckled, a chilling, hollow sound. Hurt them? You don't get it. I saved them. From their lies, from the emptiness. You think I killed them for pleasure? Agent Stone's voice crackled urgently in her ear. This is good, Sarah. Keep him talking about the victims. Sarah steadied her breathing. Then why did you leave them like that, David? In warehouses, in the dark. He blinked, and for a split second his composure faltered. Because, he whispered. That's where I realized they were never meant to stay. They broke something in me, Sarah. But you can fix it. He reached across the table, his hand trembling slightly as it moved toward hers. "You can fix me." Sarah froze. Every instinct screamed to pull away, but she forced herself to stay calm. "David, I can't help you if you don't tell me the truth." He stared at her for a long moment, then smiled faintly. "You're already helping me, just by being here. Do you know what it means to have someone who listens?" At that exact moment, Agent Stone's voice came through, low and tense. "He's starting to fixate again. Do not provoke him. Stay calm." Sarah nodded almost imperceptibly. "I'm listening," she said softly. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "They think they can catch me. The FBI, the cops. They think they're smart. But they don't know what I've planned." Agent Stone's voice turned sharp. "Careful. He might be signaling an escape plan." Sarah swallowed hard. "What do you mean, David? What plan?" He smiled. Slow, eerie, deliberate. "If things go wrong tonight, Sarah, you'll come with me. You won't have to worry about anyone else ever again." In that moment, a faint sound echoed outside, the crunch of gravel under a boot. David's eyes flickered toward the window. Then he looked back at her. "They're here, aren't they?" Sarah froze. Her blood turned to ice. David stood up abruptly, his chair scraping the floor. "You betrayed me. David, please." But before she could finish, he reached into his jacket. "Move in. Move in." Agent Stone's voice erupted through the comms. Glass shattered as agents stormed through both entrances, shouting commands. David turned, eyes wild, his hand gripping something metallic. Not a gun, but a knife gleaming under the lights. "Drop it!" an agent yelled. David's gaze darted between Sarah and the armed agents surrounding him. For a split second, the mask slipped entirely, revealing nothing but rage and despair. "You were supposed to be different," he hissed. Sarah's voice trembled as she whispered, "It's over, David." He took one last step toward her, and a shot rang out. David staggered, eyes wide, blood spreading across his shirt. He fell backward, the knife clattering beside him. Silence. Then Agent Stone's voice, "Suspect down. Secure the area." Sarah sat frozen, her heart pounding so violently she could barely breathe. The nightmare was over, but in her mind, his words still echoed. "You were supposed to be different." Outside, the flashing red and blue lights painted the night in pulses of chaos and relief. Jessica ran to her, wrapping her arms around her tightly. "He's gone," Jessica whispered. "It's over." But as Sarah looked at the lifeless figure being covered by a white sheet, she couldn't shake the chilling thought that, for David Hartwell, it might never really be over. Because monsters like him don't just die. They linger in memory, in fear, and in every shadow that follows you home. The crash of the chair echoed through the restaurant like a gunshot. Every agent in the room tensed at once. "David, please." Sarah tried to calm him, her hands trembling beneath the table. "Don't you dare say my name like that," he snarled. "You think I'm stupid? You think I wouldn't notice?" His eyes darted wildly around the room, scanning every corner, every reflection. His breathing was erratic now, the calm mask completely gone. Agent Stone's voice came through the earpiece, low but urgent. Sarah stepped back slowly. "Don't make any sudden movements." But David was already circling the table, his expression shifting from confusion to fury. "You were supposed to be different. You were supposed to understand me." Sarah's pulse pounded in her ears. "I do, David. I do understand. That's why I came here, to listen, to help you." He stopped, only inches from her now. His voice dropped to a trembling whisper. "No, no, you came here to betray me, just like the others." In her earpiece, Stone whispered again, "We have snipers in position. Don't let him get closer to the exit." "David, look at me," Sarah said, her voice steady despite her shaking. "I didn't lie to you. I wanted to believe you could be honest tonight. We can still fix this. Just sit down. Talk to me again." For a fleeting moment, something flickered in his eyes. Doubt, hesitation. But it was gone as fast as it came. He laughed softly, the sound hollow and broken. "You almost had me, Sarah. You almost made me believe you cared." He turned abruptly toward the door. Two agents disguised as staff stepped forward. "Sir, you can't. Don't move," David screamed, pulling something from his jacket. A knife glinting under the dim light. "Knife!" one of the agents shouted. Chaos erupted. Tables overturned, glass shattered, and Sarah stumbled back as agents rushed in from every direction. "David, put it down," Agent Rodriguez commanded, his gun trained steadily on the suspect. "It's over. Don't make this worse." But David didn't lower the blade. Instead, he backed toward the window, his voice trembling with a twisted mix of anger and grief. "You don't understand. She was supposed to save me." Sarah took a careful step forward. "David, you can still stop this. No one else has to get hurt tonight." He looked at her one last time, eyes full of something between love and rage. "You already hurt me." Then, in one sudden motion, he lunged. "Go, go, go!" shouted Stone. Gunfire cracked through the air, deafening and final. David froze mid-stride, the knife slipping from his hand, clattering across the tiles. His body went limp before collapsing to the floor. The world fell silent except for the ringing in Sarah's ears. "Suspect down," an agent called out. "Secure the perimeter." Sarah stood frozen, unable to move, her chest heaving. The smell of gunpowder hung in the air. A hand touched her shoulder. Agent Stone. "It's over," she said softly. Sarah's eyes filled with tears she hadn't realized she'd been holding back. "No," she whispered. "It's never really over." As agents moved around them, collecting evidence, photographing the scene, David's body lay still on the cold floor. The same man who once sent roses and messages filled with flattery now looked impossibly small, emptied of the monstrous energy that had once consumed him. Outside, the flashing red and blue lights reflected off the restaurant windows, drawing a small crowd of onlookers. Reporters would arrive within the hour. The story of David Eugene Hartwell, the dating app killer, was over, at least officially. But for Sarah, the end didn't feel like relief. It felt like standing at the edge of something vast and dark, knowing that even though one monster had been stopped, there were others out there, still hiding behind charming smiles and perfect profiles. In her earpiece, Agent Stone's voice came through one last time. "You did good, Sarah. You saved lives tonight." Sarah didn't answer. She simply looked down at the broken glass on the floor, a silent reminder of how easily something beautiful could turn dangerous. Then, quietly, she said the only words that felt true. "He said he never gives up. I guess he kept his promise. Just not the way he thought." The courtroom had been silent that day when the verdict was read. The man once known as Marcus Thompson, charming, eloquent, and so good at pretending, sat expressionless as the judge spoke the words that sealed his fate. Life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Sarah watched from the back of the room, Jessica beside her, her hand tightly gripping Sarah's. It didn't feel like victory, it felt like survival. When David was escorted out of the courtroom, he looked over his shoulder just once. His eyes searched for Sarah, and for a brief second, they met. There was no rage there anymore, just emptiness. She turned away before the deputies could push him through the doors. That was the last time she ever saw him. Months passed. The headlines faded. The Tinder predator, as the media dubbed him, was old news. But for Sarah, the echoes of that nightmare still lingered in small, quiet ways. She'd wake up sometimes at 3 a.m., convinced she'd heard her phone buzz, only to find it was silent. Every shadow in her hallway still made her pause. Every unfamiliar number on her phone made her chest tighten. But little by little, she rebuilt her life. She changed her routine. Day shifts only. A new apartment with reinforced locks and cameras. She learned to live again, cautiously but not fearfully. Therapy helped her untangle the trauma that had nearly broken her. And Jessica never left her side through any of it. "I still have nightmares," Sarah admitted in one of her sessions. "Sometimes I see him sitting across from me again, smiling, asking me to trust him. But then I remember I survived him. And that changes everything." Her therapist nodded. You took back your power, Sarah. That's something no nightmare can undo. By the end of that year, Sarah had joined a local organization dedicated to helping women who'd been stalked or targeted through dating apps. She spoke softly during group meetings, but when she told her story, the room always fell silent. Listen to your instincts, she'd tell them. If something feels wrong, it is. Fear isn't weakness. Sometimes, it's your body trying to save your life. Agent Stone kept in touch, too. She called every few months just to check in. You know, we couldn't have caught him without you, she told Sarah once. Most people freeze in fear. You stayed calm. You saved lives. Sarah smiled faintly. Maybe, but I didn't feel brave. I just didn't want to die. Sometimes, Stone replied. That's exactly what bravery looks like. By the spring of the following year, Sarah finally felt ready to go out again. Not on a date, but just to live. She and Jessica went to Café Luna, the same place where it all started. The coffee tasted the same, but everything else felt different. She looked out the window and saw the city bathed in sunlight, full of people living their ordinary lives. Something she once thought she'd never get back. Jessica raised her cup. To moving on, she said. Sarah clinked her mug against hers. To surviving, she corrected, smiling. As they laughed, the camera of life zoomed out. A nurse who'd faced a monster and lived to tell the world what it looked like behind the mask of charm and romance. In a federal prison in Colorado, David Eugene Hartwell spent his days in silence. He never spoke about his crimes again. No letters, no interviews, no contact with the outside world. The man who once manipulated and hunted his victims now lived out his years in a concrete cell. A ghost of the predator he once was. For Sarah, healing wasn't about forgetting. It was about reclaiming her story from the man who tried to end it. And every time she told it, another woman listened, and maybe, somewhere, one of them would trust her instincts sooner because of it. As Sarah once said in a later interview for a safety awareness campaign, he thought he'd chosen his next victim, but in the end, he chose the one woman who would stop him forever.